Welcome to Rising Together, Local Women Leading Differently, a podcast where we celebrate women, share resources, and tell the real stories of what it takes to lead and build differently. Here we believe visibility is power, collaboration is the antidote to competition, and vulnerability is the birthplace of trust. I'm Emma Malvani, a women's empowerment mentor, creating spaces for women to deepen their intuition, self-trust, and confidence in life and business. I'm honored to be your host and share these conversations with you. Today's guest is an interior designer with a philosophy I just love, that your home should feel like you, not a furniture catalog. I sat down with Tara Le Veque of Adorne Interiors, and we talk about authenticity in design, how to create spaces that feel cozy and cohesive, and why the pieces with a story are always the ones worth keeping. If you've ever walked into a room and just felt something, this conversation is going to help you understand why and how to create that in your own home. Let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation because when we last chatted and authenticity came up, it was like not only were we both on a very similar wavelength, but it was just so fun to think of authenticity from a design perspective. So I'm curious for you how you would personally define like authentic design.
I would definitely define it as authentic design has to be something that represents you. So when you walk into someone's home, it doesn't feel like, oh, they just went and purchased a whole setup at one furniture store with matching everything. And, like there's something very kind of stale about that. I think for the design to feel authentic, but also still well designed, I think there needs to be kind of a history there. So if you're like, let's just say you're in your 50s and everything is like, so on trend, it just feels a little off. Because you have a history, like you have a life that you've lived, and maybe there's parts of it that you're like, yeah, I'm ready to let that go. But there may be parts that are very special to you. And so why not have that beautiful antique chest that was your grandmother's or whatever? And why not have, this great piece of art that you picked up when you were traveling the world in your 20s? Like you still have those things that kind of represent yourself still. So I think that's one way. And then I have to just share this. A designer friend of mine, I just saw a reel she posted on Instagram, and her house was beautiful, by the way. It's so well designed. But she's like walking around, she's like, it's okay to look like you live here. And so she's kind of, and it's not like a horrible mess, but it's just like, lived in, like, yeah, there's a coffee mug out there. There's a, whatever. But it's still very well, beautiful design place. So it's also kind of like dropping this pretentiousness of, sometimes design can feel like that. And it's like, why? What's the point of that? It should be enjoyable,
Yeah. Well, I feel like because of and I got swept up in this, like the HGTV trend of like, seeing all these spaces that are so dialed, like when they're presenting them, and doing kind of the reveal for homeowners and stuff, like, of course, everything is very staged. And in my mind, for a while, and this was like in my late 20s, and we were like, trying to get out of the apartment style living that we had in our house. Like we had bought our house, but we were still, it was very furnished, very like we were in our early 20s. And so we were trying to bring some design elements into it. And I kept feeling like the vision that I had was these like sets almost.
Yeah.
Like, very staged looking houses. And not only did I realize that like didn't fit us and I didn't really like it, but that it was missing those elements of like people actually living there.
Yeah.
And like having not just personality, but like, walking in and feeling like life in the place.
Yeah, totally. Like, have you ever heard or maybe even felt like, oh, I'm afraid to sit in here? Yeah. I mean, that, I don't know. Like, I think for most people, like most of the clients I talk to, like I'm like, how do you want your room to feel? They never say, like, I don't want to sit here. Like they never say that. They always say, I want it to feel comfortable. I want it to feel warm. I want it to feel inviting. And that's because you live there and it's because you entertain there. And that's how you want your guests to feel too.
Yeah.
And so the way you set up your space can really lend itself to supporting that ideal, or it can inadvertently take away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine like thinking about how you use a space. Like how many people have enough space in their house where they're like, well, I don't want to use it. I just want it to like look
right.
Like,
oh my gosh. Okay. I don't remember if we talked about this before, but have you ever heard of a show kitchen?
No. A show
This is so
kitchen?
funny. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So this came up, I think it was when I was at Design Chicago. So this is an event down in the Merchandise Mart for designers. And it was at one of the designer showrooms. And they were talking about, and this has got to be for some like very, very elite high-end clients that can afford to have a show kitchen, which is just like a beautiful kitchen that never gets used. And then the real kitchen is kind of behind the scenes. Yeah. I'm like, who, what? Sorry.
That,
For me, that's a little
that blows
crazy.
my mind.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like my personal ethos is like, hey, that your home is where you live, and not to say that like you need to see everything, like
Right.
a whole mess. You know, like I have makeup on right now. Like you don't need all the flaws hanging out, but you know, you do live there, so it should be authentically yours. You authentically live and work in your kitchen. You know.
Yeah.
But that's also why I prefer separated spaces. So that's a whole other conversation. So anyway,
I do want to actually dive into that for a second. But I also wanted to say, because one of my, I don't really do like a word of the year, but a word that's trending for me this season is performative and performance, and kind of in the reverse though, like noticing where I'm doing it and like wanting to do less and like looking in those spaces. And that just like makes me think of even like in a physical environment where we're like maybe performing life, but not letting people see like the real,
right?
Like, you know, my kids color on our wall, and
Exactly.
yeah, like, there's just, and we do, yeah, we live in the space, so
And I think there's something to like letting go of the should. You know, so for example, like with you, like your kids color on your walls. Well, okay, like maybe you want to clean that off, but if it happens 10 seconds before somebody comes over, you know, don't stress about it. It's
Yeah.
like most people that know you and love you are gonna just be like, yeah, okay, that happened. And the one thing that I guess sort of like it's one of those I should let it go from a like my perspective. Well, I have kids, but I also have pets. So the pet hair, my goodness. I mean, it's like it's a losing battle. I'm sorry, but I mean, I do my best. You know, it's not like I want it to accumulate. I do my best, and then it's just like I have to let it go.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's not like a personal, I feel like sometimes we take it like, oh, it's a personal reflection of like
Right.
how I take care of our home. And it's like, so not. Like, we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And like, you can't manage every little detail. But I'm curious about your philosophy of the separate spaces, because I think I'm right there with you on it.
I'm a very big fan of it for a few reasons. Some are practical and some are just personal. But from a practical perspective, when everything is open, it's it's really hard to contain noise. So for me, that's more stressful. There's also kind of going back to that performance aspect. You're always on display. You're always, you know, sort of on.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, there is nowhere to be just like, huh, you know. So if you're entertaining and you're cooking right in front of your guests, you're on and cooking, you know, versus, you know, if they're kind of like just, it doesn't have to be like a closed door or something, but just in a little separate space, you can just sort of let your guard down a little bit. You know, there's a little bit less of that. Um, Also, I just personally think it feels cozier. I think it looks more aesthetically pleasing. So I'm a huge fan of historical homes. I love beautiful old architecture. I love, you know, um, arched doorways and big trim and all of that kind of stuff. And it's really hard to do that in a space that's like devoid of walls.
Yeah. Because that's where, yeah, so much that character comes in. That like, if you don't have the structure, like, yeah, you're missing that character.
Yeah, and actually, I'm working on a project right now. Fantastic client, love her, so sweet. And her house is beautiful. They just doubled the size of their home a couple of years ago. So I didn't work on that project. But the one help with her dining room. So you walk in the door and it's the dining room, and then there's a hallway. And anyway, I'm looking at the space and she's like, it just doesn't feel finished. It doesn't feel finished. And there's a lot of beautiful things that they did with this space already. But as I'm examining it, I'm like, the reason it doesn't feel finished is because you have this long, it used to be a wall and it's taken out. But from a structural perspective, there's these two, they're not, I want to call them pillars, but they're not really, because they're not they're not really framed out. It's just sort of like covered in drywall, but they're very skinny. It's not framed.
Yeah.
And it's not really like a column that you can call decorative. It's just sort of like they're there because they have to be there. And I'm like, this is the reason this room feels unfinished. You know, they entertain a lot. So there's tons of people in there all the time. So I can see why they would want that ability to flow. So right now we're exploring ideas of, okay, well, we either need to frame this out, make this look really intentional and keep the 3 openings, or perhaps the 1 opening's okay because it's a pretty wide, it's like 55 inches. And maybe what we do, because I think that keeping some of that light and visual is important as well. Maybe what we do is close off the bottom part of the wall, but leave an opening, like an archway kind of a thing with some shelves. You can do some beautiful decor there and still get that light and visual distance in there, but still feel cozy. When we drew up the rendering, it was like immediately I'm like, this looks great. You know, like this is the thing. And it feels better. Like you look at it and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm in a space versus feeling a little bit discombobulated because something is just a little bit off.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm curious, so for people that want to create more of that like coziness, what are some of like the elements they would think about if they're like sitting in their space and they're like, it's just not going?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I always do is look at the space planning. So with that, like here, as an example, these chairs are pulled away from the wall, which makes a huge difference. If these were just flat, it would feel a little off. So the first thing I would do is take a look around and see where you can pull things off the wall and, you know, soften the corners. Like right here, you've got this nice soft corner. So this feels comfortable. It, you know, it looks beautiful. So that's the first thing I would do. The next thing would be looking at your area rug. Assuming you have, you know, some type of hardwood floor, the area rug will always ground the space. And 9 times out of 10, you want to go bigger rather than smaller. So you want to try to make sure that at least the front 2 legs of all the pieces of furniture are on the rug. And most designers would say, like, no, all 4 legs need to be on the rug. But what you don't want is to have all the legs off, you know? So that would be the second thing. The third would be looking at, I mean, obviously, if the furniture is worn out, you know, then that would be something you want to look at updating. But if it's fine, you know, look at your color palette. Because sometimes, you know, even if you've got, let's say you're like, oh, I just want to do white. And, you know, people think like, oh, white is white is white. But it's really not because some whites have a yellow undertone, some have a blue undertone. So if something's going off, I would definitely look at the whites in the room, assuming it's like a neutral, because sometimes that can be off and it's hard to realize if you're not looking for it. But as soon as you see it, it's like, that's all you can see, you know? And then of course, you know, looking at, I'm a big fan of art. So your art, your accessories, like things like, do you need it? Is it something you love? Is it something you know, use? Yeah, I could go on and on and on. I'm sorry.
No, I love it because it's making me think too of that, like the difference between the performative and then like self-expression of like how you can bring in pieces of yourself to the space to make it yours. And like outside of kind of like the obvious of like, oh, you know, accented pillows or things like that. What are some of the ways that people could bring in some personality, or is there like maybe a balance that they should be looking for as far as, you know, I said should, but like a balance they might want to keep in mind as far as like how much color.
Well, I think it's really important to start with the end in mind. And I always ask clients, how do you want this room to feel? You know, so if you've got a client or if you're a person who is like, yeah, I want it to feel fun and bold and interesting and energetic, that's going to be a whole different list of, okay, well then let's go down this path. Versus if they're like, I want it to feel calm, I want it to feel rested. So just as an example with color, like, okay, you want it to be fun. I'm thinking already in my head, I've got bold colors, I've got big patterns, maybe a maximalist wall treatment, you know, something really exciting like that versus if you are looking more for like, no, this is my retreat. This is where I come to relax, where I just want to like, breathe. Well, now all of a sudden I'm thinking more of like softer colors and less accessories. Maybe there's just one, large piece on the wall, but more quiet space,
Yeah.
So I think you really have to decide on like, how do I want this thing to feel before you even start going into all the details of how you're going to make it happen.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a good point because it's making me think of we're redoing our living room. And like by redoing, I mean like we moved in 3 years ago and we never
Yeah.
painted it. So like it's kind of minimal. But it's making me think like in the bedroom when we painted it, I knew I was like, I want sanctuary.
Yeah.
I want to come in here and I want like the visual stimulation to be so minimal and like so everything's very muted and like creamy and white and stuff. But then when we were thinking about the living room, I was like, I want it to feel like fun and have a little like boldness to it. And so we're still doing kind of like an off-whitish wall, but like our fireplace, we're doing like a black. And like we have this accent wall we're gonna do in the front, and just bringing in some of those elements that because we want it to feel different, than obviously how we want the bedroom to feel. But I'm curious your take now, maybe like a little personal advice, like how to have different maybe moods or feels in different spaces, but still like a cohesion.
Sure.
Like,
well, I think one thing is when you look at your floors and your trim. So things feel very cohesive if you can keep mostly the same floor throughout. So like hardwood is great for that because you can have hardwood everywhere. I wouldn't have it in the bathroom obviously, but everywhere else you can pretty much have hardwood, and that makes it feel very cohesive versus if you had a different floor for your family room, for your bedroom, for your kitchen, it feels very choppy. And then, your trim throughout, if that can be the same, whether it's white trim or wood or even black, like some black trim is very cool. But keeping that consistent throughout can really help. And then you can change, you can still have, like your jewel box powder room as an example, and then your cool, fun living room. And then, your bedroom can definitely be calm, but it's still going to feel cohesive if you have a few of those elements that are running throughout your home that are consistent.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I hadn't really thought about like the floor. And like, because I'm even thinking now, like our kitchen has this one awful floor that we're so ready to rip out. But then everywhere else kind of has the hardwood, and it feels. I think now we haven't done every room, but just even like mentally right now thinking about how it does help the cohesion and the spaces as we're thinking about what to do with that.
And also thinking about your wall color because, do you have like one big long wall that obviously has to be painted all one color? And if so, then, how you paint the other walls that touch it are important because you want to make sure that it coordinates. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but just kind of, I'm just going to go back to the white example. You don't want to put like a blue white with a creamy white. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to work. So you want to look at it holistically. You can look at your color palette, especially what's touching each other, which doesn't mean that everything has to be the same. And actually, this space that we're in, which I don't know if anyone can see the rest of it, but they did a fantastic job with that. This whole space, there's different things happening. There's different moods in some of these different rooms, but you can feel the cohesion of the design all throughout, which makes it really fun and interesting to explore.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I'm curious in your work, as you obviously have worked with different clients, do you see people kind of second guessing their own like choices? How do you approach and kind of work with that?
Gosh, that's a kind of a hard one because some of it is so subjective. Sometimes you'll see things that it's like, well, this is beautiful and this is beautiful. Like this can work and this can work. Where it's not like this is just wrong, so I'm going to talk you out of it. You know what I mean? Those are kind of easier because if it's wrong for whatever reason, I can say, you know what, I would advise going against that because, and then I can give a good reason. Versus if it's like, yeah, these both work. It's kind of personal preference. Then, we have to have a conversation about, well, what feels better, And sometimes people have different goals. Like if your goal is to resell within 2 years, then maybe you're going to make a different choice than if you're like, no, this is my forever home. And I just
Yeah.
I just love it. So,
That's a good point. I'm thinking too about something my mom said to me recently because she was looking at like the way I wanted the fireplace and the tile that I picked. And I loved this tile before it was popular, and now it's become like trendy. And so she's
okay.
like, "Oh, this whole thing looks really trendy. In like 2
Okay.
years, you're really gonna regret it." And I'm like, "Yeah, like I know it's super trendy right now, and I get that. And probably to other people, it will look like dated or whatever, or it'll look like, oh, they went trendy then, and now like things are different." Um, but I just love it so much that how do you kind of balance like the trend, I guess,
Oh my
and
goodness.
like how
Yeah.
people get, either really into it or they're like really against it, like
Yeah.
because design is so subjective.
I know. And it's kind of it's hard not to get sucked into, every single year, like, oh, what's the color of the year and all that kind of stuff. And it's because it's fun to talk about,
Yeah.
and you don't want to just all of a sudden like, okay, I'm going to redo my whole house and it's going to look outdated in 5 minutes. You don't want that. So that's why I really like to mix designs. So instead of just being like, okay, this house is farmhouse. Okay, this is mid-century modern. Okay, this is, whatever, fill in the blank. I really love to mix styles together and to make it look more layered. Like, okay, this house has been lived in and curated over a period of time. Like I love creating that aesthetic because then when you walk in and you can't exactly pinpoint like this is from this time period, this is from that time.
Right.
When it all kind of just blends together, it seems to have more longevity. I wish I could take credit for this design, but I met actually an artist through one of our networking events that we do, and she invited me to see her studio, which was in the basement of her home. So I got to see her home, and when I walked in, I was completely geeking out. I'm loving her house. It was so great, just beautiful, and it was bold. I mean, I'm talking like hot pink, black, and white, like things that I would not have personally thought of, especially not as something that you would think would have any longevity. She's like, oh yeah, this was done, by a designer like 7 years ago or whatever. And I was thinking, what? How in the world is it possible that this still looks so amazing? And so I started really thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, you know why? Because she mixed some different styles. Like there were some antique pieces in there, with the original. Well, probably an updated finish, but like it wasn't painted or anything. It was like a beautiful wood. She also took like a really traditional looking side chair, but painted it white and then put this really cool hot pink leather on it. I mean, it just was amazing how everything just mixed together. But because of the color palette and because of mixing in old and new, it had that longevity and it was very bold. Like this is definitely not for everybody, but it was so very cool and definitely suited that client. And I was in love with it. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
So,
oh, I love that. So I'm just thinking through like, not necessarily like, are there strict rules, but are there like some guidelines or ways to think about mixing things? And
yeah, I would
incorporating?
definitely think of undertones for sure.
Mm.
So, I'm thinking of one room I went into recently where and at the beginning there was like, I think one, two, like, there was like 5 different wood tones in a room that was smaller than this. And they didn't like the undertones were all over the place. You had like a reddish, you had a totally golden yellow, and you had a gray. And I'm like, whew, okay. We need to back up from this. So you can definitely mix, like let's just say wood tones for right now. But you want to make sure the undertone is in the same family. So like I wouldn't really put that yellow and that gray together as an example for the undertones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one place I would start. Scale is another. So, you want to make sure that things feel balanced. Like even here, like we can see like this chair feels balanced. These 2 chairs feel balanced to the sofa because it's not like these are super tiny and that's very large as an example. So you want to make sure that that feels balanced as well.
Yeah. God, all these things that I like wouldn't necessarily think of intentionally. I guess it's like sometimes you walk into a space and like you either know it works or you know it doesn't.
Right.
But you're like,
but you're not sure why. Exactly.
Or like, how do I like intentionally create that like in another space or something? Like we're looking at our living room again. Sorry, bringing up my own home, but like we have this like it's kind of a longer space. And we're like, how do we create like different moments so that it's not just like this giant rug, like a circle of furniture around the fireplace, like but we've walked into other places and been like, oh, this feels really good. Why? Let's see what we can like kind of ascertain.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking too about that, like the curated over time style and like how that feels really good.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize it until you were like saying it, that I think that is one of the big pieces that feels so good about, and something that the places that I love, I feel like have in common. It's like that they do that really well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it does feel really authentic and feels really like home when you do that with some of your own pieces. Because especially if you know, if you've been around a while, if you're gonna like, you know, if you're not 21 or whatever, you may have some pieces that are like that are still really cool that maybe you picked up along the way, or there may be some things you're like, you know what, that IKEA piece from my 20s needs to go, needs to go, right? But I think
people thrifting so much now.
Oh, totally.
Too. And like just passing furniture around. Like that's the big thing we do in our neighborhood. We're like the
Oh,
neighbor will
that's so
call and be
cool.
like, we're getting rid of all this stuff. And like people are just like,
Oh my
you
gosh,
see
I
people
love
like
it.
going across the street and like moving furniture. Like, so like it's just like
that's so
having
nice.
like a history of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
I love that you guys have that kind of energy in your neighborhood. So it's not just out there. You're actually having a conversation about it. That's really cool.
Yeah. So I like having things that have like a story. And I think that's becoming like more widely valued.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we went from kind of a, not like a sterile, but like curated, but in a very different way as far as like design. And now I feel like it is a trend, almost a trend that I hope is just here to stay, but to bring authenticity of personality and history.
Well, and there's so many good reasons to do it. I'm just going to touch on like the tips for a second. I mean, one, economically, right? It's pretty nice. But also, it makes me cringe so hard to think about, I'll call it like the fast fashion furniture that just goes in the garbage. Oh, like it just makes me feel so icky inside to think about. I mean, I'm just going to say it, crummy materials that are not at all natural, that are, you know, put together with sawdust and glue, basically.
But you can tell.
And I know, and it doesn't last. You can tell right away. It doesn't feel good. It's never comfortable. And then it just goes in the garbage. And it's just, you know, it just feels so wasteful to me. You know, things like upholstery, like, yeah, like eventually you need to either reupholster or just buy new because, you know, that's not going to last forever. But wood pieces, gosh, I mean, wood pieces can last, good wood pieces can last a long time. So highly recommend thrifting. I love also, I have to say, I still love when people upcycle and will, you know, repaint pieces and really give them more of a modern flair. I love that still. So trendy or not.
No,
I love it.
I love it because I feel like this was when I started to feel old, was when I said to my husband, we were furniture shopping. And everywhere we went, I was like, God, they just don't make it like they used to. It was like all these
But you're right.
woods, I was like, they feel hollow, like nothing. And I mean, that's across the board. Like the quality of stuff has just really declined. But I didn't realize like that I came to like appreciate really like the quality of these older pieces. And I was also having these moments of like, I get what my mom was talking about. Like because we never, rarely bought a new piece of furniture. She was always, you know, swapping with friends or garbage picking. Like we used to make fun of her because she was like, her biggest thing, and she still kind of does this though, is like picking up pieces out of the trash and then like painting them or like doing something. And it was like a joke when we were younger to like kind of make fun of her. And now I'm like, I get it, like 100%. And it was for her too, she said like such an accessible way to change up the environment too. Like just buying a quart of paint and, you know, changing the color on a piece of furniture. And
wow, she was ahead of her time.
A little bit, yeah, in many ways, which I have to tell her now, like how much I appreciate it because we would say that's a joke. But it's just added such personality too to like the warmth and added warmth to the spaces to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was like such a big
No, I think
tangent
it's
on the quality
totally
of furniture, but
no, believe
yeah.
me, I could go on and on about that. No, you're spot on. Even okay, so my grandma, when she passed um several years ago, there was this one piece of furniture. It's just a little tiny wooden magazine rack that she had her lamp on. She had her recliner there. This piece, it was just a fixture in her house since forever. And I'm pretty sure she may have gotten it like from her mom or something. I don't even think in reality I don't think it's like a super valuable piece of furniture, but because it was made so long ago, I mean, it's still really good quality. But for me, like the finish just didn't work in my aesthetic. Plus, it just needed some love. I mean, it was old enough that it just needed. And so, a friend of mine at the time, she was refinishing furniture, and she really had an amazing process of like, you know, several layers of sanding and painting and all kinds of different things to like really make it last. So I just commissioned her to do that, and now it's this beautiful little piece in our living room that I just love so much. And so to me, it's like it's so special because it's got it came from my grandma, but it's got this second life that fits into our space, and there's a story there, and it's beautiful, and so yeah, I'm right there with your mom.
Yeah.
Although I don't do that myself, but
Well,
I like having it.
to your point, like that it makes you feel good
Mm-hmm.
to see it too.
Yeah.
Like I love having like pieces like that throughout design where
Yeah.
like you walk in and you see it and it just makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, Marie Kondo or furniture or something. But I just love it. So are there any, I guess I would say like exceptions to bringing or ways of bringing more authenticity to design? Maybe something that like you would say kind of doesn't work. Or,
Well, I don't think you can throw out the whole design rule book in an effort of authenticity. Like I was thinking about this beforehand. It's kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't go walking around outside my bathrobe. Like I'm not gonna like
Right.
show up to a client meeting with no makeup on. There's like there is some element of like, hey, you want to look nice or you want your home to look nice, so you don't just
Yeah.
throw everything out the door, in an effort of authenticity. Otherwise, I think, all of a sudden there's too much out on display,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good either. I mean, you want to feel integrity and some sense of dignity and all that kind of stuff. So I think you still look at things like scale, making sure colors, work well together. Um, yeah, that all the design elements are there, pattern and whatnot. But I can't really think of anything that's just like, no, this doesn't work unless it's like, well, yeah, the scale is wrong or no, the color is wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you still have to remember the basic rules of design as you're endeavoring to bring in things that are maybe old or antique or thrifted or whatever.
Yeah. I love that. So one of the things that seems to be on the rise is the incorporation of like natural textures and a lot of like nature coming inside. And I think it's like attention to like how things physically feel,
Yeah.
That texture. Do you see that at any point like going away?
Gosh, I mean, design trends change all the time. So I think everything will, go away, if you will, from a trend perspective. But I don't think that you have to be a slave to the trend. So, but some people's style like that, that's just not going to be their thing. Like I love it. I love the textures. I love the natural feel. To me, it's like a breath of fresh air. It just feels great. But there's also something to be said about, the Hollywood Regency style, which is very glam and very shiny and, kind of the opposite of more of like this organic, modern style that I'm thinking of. So I think there's a time and space for everything. It just you have to go back to how do you want your space to feel?
Yeah.
And, yeah, and what are your goals? Like we talked about before, is this your forever home or is this, yeah, I'm designing for me, but I'm also kind of designing for the market. That makes a big difference in how you approach your design decisions.
Yeah. That's very cool. I like that perspective. And I was just thinking, kind of one of my reasons behind that question is like just thinking about how things like feel viscerally and like how they feel to like our nervous system that I think, there's now such an increasing awareness of how things feel on that like almost subconscious level that I'm just curious in the future to see like if there are elements of this that just stay
Yeah.
because they feel so good to us after like such a period of maybe disconnection
Yeah.
from nature. And honestly, like as culture trends toward, increased technology and AI and things like that, that will we be craving
Oh my God.
and feeling into that like visceral experience within a
Yeah.
physical environment too.
Oh, that's a very good point
Yeah.
because I think the more we see, and not that I'm totally against AI, but the more we see of AI, I think there is more of that desire to know what's real and to experience what's real.
Yeah.
Um, and you can still do that even with other styles. As I was sitting here thinking, part of the real aspect I think is also quality,
Hmm.
so, when you touch, let's just say like a really nice thick velvet, let's just
Yeah.
say, like that has a different feeling than something that just is cheap, it's thin, it's,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, that being said, they're probably both like polyester, um, but yeah, I see what you mean, and I see where you're going with that, and I thought about that too, like just this idea of I think I do want more something that feels like wool or something that feels
Mhm.
like cotton or linen versus if it's gonna be a polyester or whatever else,
Mhm.
it needs to be a really good one that doesn't have that kind of immediate fake plasticky
Mhm.
kind of texture to it.
Yeah. Because I think our bodies, we can discern the quality of things.
Mhm.
Like, even if you don't have the language for it or you don't think you
Mhm.
can tell the difference, like, I think there just really is like an innate
Yeah.
connection that we can like feel
Yeah.
between, oh, this is a really good one, or like, oh, this was,
Yeah.
fast fashion, so type.
Right.
Yeah.
And on a practical perspective, the other piece of advice I'll throw in there for free is, when it comes to your area rug, look for 100% wool.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
personally, I
Mhm.
prefer hand knotted versus machine for several different reasons. One, super cleanable, will last
Mm.
forever,
Mhm.
feels very comfortable underfoot, very forgiving. Um, and then if I mean, there's like a million different designs you can get into, but if you really start to train your eye, you can see what's
Mhm.
high quality versus maybe like not as much. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, and yeah, your brain really does start to respond to those things. And maybe it
Mhm.
already is and you're just not aware of it.
Yeah.
And I've definitely experienced that. I was in another client's house the other day and it was like, why does this feel stressful? And
Mm.
why does my house does not feel and I'm looking around and I'm like, well, I mean, you definitely have some blue light in here, which
Mm.
is going to definitely affect your psyche a lot.
Yeah.
So they switched the bulbs out. They're like, yeah, that made a difference.
Yeah.
So I know that was something so simple, but
Mhm.
it really did make a huge difference, and that's because that's mimicking natural light versus more of like the sterile, hospital or grocery store lighting.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because something that I hadn't thought about until you presented for us at
Mhm.
the collective meeting was, well, one, the acoustics
Mhm.
and just thinking about how sound travels and like we don't have carpet or
Right.
some different elements that I actually wanted to ask you to speak to it instead of having you reiterate. So those acoustic elements and then also like the layers of lighting that
Mhm.
I had never really thought of. Like my mom just again, she's like a light freak. So she'll like
Oh.
come in and just start dimming things and she'll do
Oh,
things. She
wow.
like
I
her
want to meet your
and
mom.
like sometimes they're like, Mom, I actually like need the light right now.
Yeah, how
But
neat.
but
That's
she like
funny.
sets that mood through
Yeah.
like the lighting and stuff. And so I'm starting to now kind of appreciate some of that. So can you talk about some things that you can do acoustically to make things feel good?
Yeah.
Especially maybe if you have little kids and like lighting.
Sure.
So,
Well, so look at your existing environment. If you already have hardwood floors or other hard
mhm.
surfaces, so not carpet, I would definitely start looking at putting some rugs down, making sure they're the right size because that starts to help absorb some noise. I would look at window treatment.
Mm.
So let's say you've got hard lines on it, that's not really doing anything to help with noise. So you could do soft lines, like, those Hunter Douglas silhouettes as an example, or drapery or both. So that will definitely help. The other thing that I'm seeing that it's really helpful, especially in some environments that are just inherently loud, or you can get acoustic wall panels. And there's several different ways to do this. So you can do the ones that are sort of, think about the floor to ceiling, looks like wooden slat, looks very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Those are, you can get those where there's acoustical elements on the backside, so it's absorbing the noise, even though it looks like it's wood.
Oh,
Um,
I know that. That's
those are really
cool.
cool. And then if that's like, that's not really like the right aesthetic, you can do art pieces. So kind of similar to this, which actually this feels like it's an acoustical piano as well. So you can do art pieces similar to this, or just all kinds of different designs that serve two functions. They're on the wall to look beautiful, but then they're also absorbing that sound as well. And then, of course, your furnishings, if you're looking at the room and you're like, wow, it's kind of empty, then, it's time for to put some thoughtful pieces of furniture in there to, again, serve the purpose of it's going to look better, it's going to feel better, and it's also going to absorb some of that sound.
And then lighting,
Yeah.
because I feel like there is also like a growing awareness how lighting affects us, obviously, but then how we can use it to kind of curate a feeling within the room.
Yeah, your mom is so on point. I have to give her props.
I have to tell her.
Yes.
Thrilled to hear that, I swear.
Well, truly, because, one big piece of recommendation is get dimmers on every single light that you possibly can, because then you can control the mood. You can make it brighter when you need to read or, complete a task or whatever. And you can dim it when you're just like trying to chill or watch a movie, but you don't want it pitch black. And then having it layered really makes a difference. It makes it feel so much more finished. Imagine you've got a room with just a single source of light on the ceiling versus you've got a room like, okay, you've got that single source, but then you've also got some lamps, you've got some wall sconces. It just feels so much better. It feels finished. It feels like comforting. Everybody light is life, right? You need it. And especially if you get the right bulbs in there that feel clean and warm without doing blue. Please don't do that. It's like the biggest mistake ever. But then you can really control your environment. You've got a lot more that you can do with it to make it feel exactly the way that you want it to feel when you walk in that room.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Like, it feels like you have more factors and or like elements to like work with.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes
and even accent lighting, let's say like on bookshelves or your cabinetry, that makes a huge difference too. And for some reason in our kitchen, I barely ever will turn them on, but for some reason my husband remembers when people come over, he'll turn on like the cabinet lights. I'm like, oh yeah, it does. It looks so nice, and he just always remembers to do that.
It's funny because I was just sitting in the room over there at the den where they have the lighting in the bookshelf.
Oh yeah.
And I was just looking at like all of that and just thinking like, oh my gosh, this creates like such a beautiful effect.
It does.
That feels so like next level a little bit. Like it's that elevated.
It is completely. Yeah. There was a space, and I think they'll do it later, but anyway, we were working on this client's home office, and there was it's a decent sized space, and there's kind of this beautiful built-in, but because there's so much open shelving and just the nature of work, how like papers pile up and everything, it was just getting a bit cluttered for them. So we had talked about some different solutions. So I kept coming back to, people are going to work, they're going to keep accumulating, and it's kind of just always going to look a little cluttered. On the other side of this room, it's really cool. It's like these 4 club chairs, and they call this the wine room or the bourbon room. So like after hours, this is where they entertain. This is where they hang out. It's very cool. And so, but they still have this work element happening. So I'm like, okay, why not do ceiling mounted drapery to just cover this whole thing up? And the room is already very cool. It's like this saturated, almost like deep evergreen kind of color. It's very awesome. I love it. So I'd want to do the drapery in the same, and maybe it's like a velvet, like something very cool, so that when you close that off, it feels like you just stepped into this really swanky cocktail bar. But the thing that sets it off, uplight.
Ooh.
So they're kind of hidden away on each corner of the room. And then when you turn that on, then you like get this really cool effect with the drapery. It's just, to your point, very subtle, but very elevated. So I'm kind of excited about that design.
Yeah. I had never thought about uplight. That's such.
Yeah, just like a spotlight. So imagine it's like on the floor, but it's highlighting something. And in this case, it's just creating light and dark so shadows on the drapery, because the drapery is already so dark. If you're thinking, okay, just having the overhead light, it's not going to be the same effect as that little uplight. And if you see, we were looking at inspiration pics. It's like, yep, that's the difference. Those lights is what makes the difference in that. Otherwise, it just kind of falls a little bit flat.
Wow, so cool. Got all these like little details to make such.
Yeah, it's definitely a detailed business.
Yeah, I love it though, because it really comes together to create such an experience in a space. I just appreciate all of that. So for people that might be feeling like maybe overwhelmed at the idea of, sprucing up their space or elevating it, what's like one small or kind of accessible either change that they could make or like thing that they should look at?
So first of all, it can be overwhelming for sure. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I don't know how many people are going to love this advice, but this is honestly every single client, every single person, my own home. People need to declutter. That's the first thing. That's the first thing I would do if things are not feeling quite right. Unless you're like a minimalist and this is not an issue with you, but I've never met that person. So I don't know.
Where are they?
I have no clue. But most of us are so blessed with what we have that we have a ton of stuff. And honestly, it's a huge source of stress. It can be a huge source of stress, and it can be too much, and it can be mentally taxing, visually unappealing. I would start there. And I know it's not the most glamorous, fun thing in the world, but it makes a big, big difference in how your space feels. And then it's almost like starting with a clean slate, and then you can see like, oh, now I can add my rug or accessories or artwork or rearrange something,
Yeah. Well, it frees up your headspace. Yeah. But I feel like even like receive the inspiration or have the ideas, you got to take all that clutter away first.
Yeah.
And like then almost like to me, every time I like declutter a space, I almost feel like their space opens up like in my body.
It does.
Where I'm like, oh, I can actually receive inspiration now.
Exactly. I feel like I can breathe easier. I feel less. And it's like, why? Because that stuff was away. At least in our house, like most of the time, it's like it's away somewhere, so you're not really seeing it. But it's like I know it's there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I loved we started implementing this at home. One of the tips that you shared last time about decluttering was having, I don't know if it's like a bag or a bin that you said where you just like put stuff into.
Yeah.
And then like after a month, if like no one's looked for it or wanted it, deciding, what you do with those items. We are going to Goodwill constantly now.
Awesome.
Just like dropping off like giant garbage bags. We have 4 kids. And so they accumulate a lot.
Totally.
And in the moment, everything is special. So like if we tried to do these things, we're like, okay, we're like going to go through your room now. Well, they want to keep everything. And everything has this memory. But I've noticed like if I like, at the end of the evening, just going to start, quietly putting some things away and seeing that over the course of the month, if anybody even says anything, like then it's like not a big deal. And it's become this like really actually like accessible way to like start clearing out some of the clutter without the fight, and it just makes me feel better every time I take something out of the
totally.
house. So good.
Yeah, and then you also feel bad for bringing something else.
Yeah. Well, and then we have started to like with the living room. We're like now we get to like really choose what comes back in, and like what do we want to have here. And we had a couple pieces of furniture that they just weren't working, like we brought them with us when we moved or someone gave them to us and we just continued to use it, probably because it still functioned for us. But we're at a point where like we're thinking about taking more into account than just the function of it. And that's been really fun to feel like, oh, we get some choice about like, thinking about how this gets incorporated and how it feels.
Yeah, you're being very intentional about it now.
Yeah. And that to me, like, intense things about it. So good to me. When it feels like we can make a choice rather than just like reacting or going along with things.
Yeah, and going back to the whole idea of clutter and kids, this is such an interesting topic. I've read so many different things, and I wish that when my kids were little, I would have done a better job implementing this advice. But I've read so many different things about how it really stresses kids out to have so many choices. So if you think about, remember when we were talking about how many items are in the average American home, and I think it's something insane like 500,000. I don't remember the exact number, but I mean, imagine being like this tiny little person trying to figure out the world, and you've got, probably 200 choices of what to play with in your room. And so, like, one of the most impactful articles I ever read, which still sticks in my mind, this woman was like talking about how, I don't know, I think it started because her kids wouldn't clean up. And so she just started throwing everything into the garbage bag, which she didn't throw away. She put it in like the attic or something. But they intentionally got out the tea set or the Legos or the whatever. And she said over the course of however long this was, like a week or a month or whatever it was, her kids were calmer, there were less meltdowns. They were like noticing things in the world more. I'm like, wow, like this is like so cool,
What do you think about it from like an adult perspective too, of how stressed we can get with like just decision fatigue?
Yes.
So like if we're going all day having to make like constant decisions, how that feels for our system. Like I can't imagine from like a child's perspective.
Yeah.
Of like if they're having to, do the same, make all these decisions or choose between so many different things, how stressing that can be. And I think about something my son's occupational therapist said when he was like 2.5, like only ever give him 2 options.
Wow.
Anything more than that is just
That's
going to be too much.
interesting.
And it made sense that like, well, yeah, if I give him like, 3 or 4, like, all these, what do you want for lunch? Or she was saying too, she's like, try not to ask open-ended questions.
Oh,
Give
okay.
choices.
Interesting.
Because if you're just asking, what do you want to play with? Or what do you want for lunch? It's like there's just too many
Little brains going on overload.
Yeah. But if you like can focus it to like, okay, do you want to play Lego or truck? It's a lot easier. And
wow.
Yeah.
Well, even with clients, I try to limit choices to 2 because one, same thing, all of us get decision fatigue and it can be super overwhelming. And 2, like, well, that's kind of why they're paying me, so they don't have to go to the store and look at 5,000 options, right?
Yeah.
So, I have other thoughts on like, what do we do to our kids? But anyway, for another time.
Yeah. I was thinking, I was like, this would be a whole nother episode. All of that we talked about with like the anxious generation too.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's there's so much that you could be doing.
Well, and I love it when I see my kids, like they're kind of past the point of playing because they're going to be 12. I have twins. They're going to be 12 this month, but they're kind of past the point of like playing. They wouldn't call it that. But I think of like seeing them get into like their flow state, in whatever they're doing, whether it's some art thing or whether it's, playing basketball or whatever the thing is. There's something really deep and important and meaningful happening in their brain when they get to that stage. But if they're in the constant mode of distraction or being, and I'm going to go there with like, or like in our house, we've decided like, hey, no short form videos. Like we are not doing that anymore because it's just hit of dopamine, over and over and over. And they're never getting to that stage of like deep thought, of deep work,
Yeah.
And for kids, play is work. Like that is their job. That's how they're learning and experiencing the world. And not to go off on a tangent, but I have a friend of mine who she's a grandmother and she takes care of her grandkids. When her daughter's at work or whatever. And when I visited her, I was amazed at how calm everybody was. These are little kids. Like they're like 2 and 4. I'm like, what is happening here? And it was because of what we were just talking about. Limited choices and there was no screens and they were just so happy and they were just like really getting into whatever it was we were doing. I think it was like Can I Stand or something. And it was just like, well, this is enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point about like the short form video. Even like I hadn't thought of as far as like, when they're like, I think about this more so in terms of like academics or something, when it's like, oh, it's disrupting their focus and their concentration, but also thinking about like if they're not able to focus or get into those like longer term, like
to solve
even
a
just
story
having
or
the patience to stay with something longer and an attention span to stay with something, like how we're robbing them of these like really juicy experiences and moments of like being in flow is like one of the best things.
It is the best.
So good.
Yeah.
And I like chase that all the things.
Yeah.
That like, how just these different quick hit type things are really disrupting that and taking that away from them.
Yeah, I know. It makes me sad when I think about it. I'm like, gosh, I wish I could drop my kids back in the 80s or 90s.
I'm trying to.
Oh, I know.
It's
It's
so
so
hard, but
hard.
it is a fight.
It is so
sometimes.
hard.
Like,
Uh,
yeah, it's just everywhere. And like my kids, they didn't know what an iPad was until they went to school.
okay.
And
Good for
so
you.
it was really, I will
That's
say,
awesome.
if there was one thing that I feel like we did, like quote unquote, right, or like I really fell on my sword about not wanting them to have screens, or personal screens. Like we have a TV, obviously, but that was the one thing that I was like going to be really strict on, and we were, and so they didn't even know until they got to school. But then it was like, okay, now we got to figure this out of like how they, how they interact with it, how they learn, and like, I accept that there are skills that they're going to have to learn in order to use these and be, productive in the society that we now have. But, balancing that with they don't need it so young, and they don't need it to the extent that, we see it sometimes. But
well, first of all, kudos to you. That, I mean, truly, I mean that. That's really good. And one of the most concerning things I read recently was about how gray matter is actually reduced in children that are on screens a lot versus it's increased on kids that are not on screens a lot. And I'm like, well, that's very telling. Why are we doing this? It's kind of like before we realized that cigarettes cause cancer. Like once you know that, it's like, why are we still doing this?
Right.
Like, why is this a thing that we are still allowing? But it's so hard, honestly. It really is. Like you have to really stick to your guns, like have really strong um rules in your house about what you're going to allow and what you're not and all of that. So for myself, I started, the year thinking like, okay, what do I want? I like, call it a resolution if you want to, but I like having that moment of reflection, like what do I want and how do I want to reach that kind of thing? And one of the things I decided to do for myself was to fast the first week of the month this year. And part of that fast is with screen. So like no scrolling as I'm falling asleep at night. No like looking, I will look at my phone for like email or text, or that kind of thing. Social media, no. News, no. That type of stuff. And it's like I've done it twice now because it's February, right? So I did it in January and February. And I'm like, this is so much better. I can already feel the habit starting to break in myself, even though it's been like 1 week, and 1 week here. But I'm like, I think I can actually do this. And I noticed for myself, like my focus was so much better. My thinking got deeper. And I'm like, you know what? If that's true for me with a fully developed brain, God, like what's it like for the kids,
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm loving that. I might have to steal it because it also makes me think that they're so empowering to reclaim our attention. And what we're focused on. And just thinking, even talking this morning with Rana, who's a workload expert, and we talked a lot about like mental load and the overwhelm and how much like we hold in our brain. And I was thinking kind of in parallel in the back of my head how much my phone and screen time and just all of that contributes to just the noise that's in my head. And how I had sent a message to someone yesterday saying like, I think I'm going to try and get off my phone because it's really creating more overwhelm. That because I'm not able to then when I get the time to focus, I'm having a hard time focusing.
Yeah.
And like, of course, that makes sense because I'm kind of on that,
Right.
ping pong attention spiral. But to set the intention and to say, like, I am going to reclaim my attention from these things that, want me to be glued to them, just how good that feels
Yeah.
to take that back and say that I get to choose,
Exactly.
where I place my attention.
Yeah, exactly. And, we have to remember that those things are designed to be addictive. They're designed to keep you on as long as possible and it's no longer a tool at that point. And that's the part that I was really trying to stress to my kids. Like, you can use these things as a tool, but as soon as they stop becoming a tool, you're the one that's being used and you're actually the product that's being sold. So, and it's so true because the reason why it's addictive is that, they want you to sell stuff or they want, they want you to buy the idea or whatever the thing is, And I was really thinking about this a lot lately, with the algorithms and all that kind of thing. And it doesn't matter, like, what your thoughts are on life or what your, background is or whatever. Like, your algorithm is dialed into you, And it's like, gosh, what a dangerous thing, just in general, like
to be in that echo chamber a little
to
bit.
be in that echo chamber and, I just think that there's something kind of wrong about that. And you have to really make an effort to break yourself out and say, no, I'm gonna explore the other side of you, or just be like, no, I'm just gonna live my life. Like, why do I need all the toys anyway? Let's just shut it off, So yeah, I think it's something that I would highly recommend everybody do, but
I love it. Do it. I mean, that's
so,
great.
sorry to go off topic.
No, I love it. And I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I could have a whole nother big conversation about it because there's so much.
Yeah,
to
it's
dig
something that's
into.
really been on my mind a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we are unintentionally brainwashing ourselves, It's not intentional, but it's happening.
Right.
And then it's spilling over, into real life, into real relationships. And I'm like, oh, this isn't healthy.
Yeah.
We gotta be careful here,
Yeah.
So
Oh my God.
yeah, but that is a whole other
Can we
conversation.
come back and have this conversation? Because I love it.
Sure, why not?
I want to dig into that more. I love it. So is there anything, thinking back to, design and authenticity and everything, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to make sure?
Gosh, you know what? I don't think so, other than, I want people to feel happy in their homes, that feel comfortable. And I think we're as authentically like, you're like, no, I'm an excited person. I want to feel excited in my home. Well, okay, cool. Then let's create that for you, So I think, again, I think we said this before, but starting with the feeling in mind, what's that environment? What do you want it to feel like? And then, looking at yourself, your family, and how you want that to be reflected. There was someone I was talking to recently that was like, like our home kind of feels sort of stale. We need some help. And he's a musician, and he was talking about different, I haven't done, gone to their house yet, but I think he was talking about different like concert posters or whatever that he's accumulated. And I'm like, oh, I already have an image of this really cool feature wall with these concert posters. Like, how awesome would that be? Like, what a conversation piece. So anyway, the point is, like trends, okay, be mindful, but more than trends, like be mindful of the actual design elements like scale, color, balance, those kinds of things, and then just make it your own.
Yeah, I like that because it feels like a structure to work within. And so like then within it you can do, just really infuse it with what feels good to you. Exactly. Thank you so much. I love this conversation.
Well, I always love
talking to have you.
Yeah.
Same. I love it. So we definitely have to come back. Well, and tell everyone where they can find you.
Online, so I'm on Adorne, ADORNE Interiors.com. And would love to talk to you or anyone else out there. So
I love it. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Rising Together, Local Women Leading Differently. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to sign up for my Love Notes newsletter, which is your weekly surge of empowerment and inspiration with a heavy dose of realness from my own journey of rising. You can sign up at emmamulvaney.com/newsletter. Until next time, remember, we all rise higher when we're rising together.